At certain moments, existence feels as though the horizon itself has shifted, an imperceptible tilt in the axis of reality that steals your breath. You awaken to a world drained of color, as if dawn arrived wearing a gray veil. The trees stand like silent sentinels, their leaves no longer shimmering in sunlight, but hanging motionless as if caught in perpetual dusk. You step outside, and the air tastes metallic, as though it carries rumors of storms yet unfelt. You walk down the street, and each footfall echoes against empty walls. The laughter that once rippled through cafe windows has become distant, like music heard underwater. Shadows lengthen unnaturally, pooling at the curb in impossible shapes, twisting fingers, coiling serpents, the outlines of faces you almost recognize. You glance at your own reflection in a shop window. Your eyes look back, but they belong to someone who treads a narrow ridge between worlds. Then, beneath your ribs, a different light begins to stir. It is no gentle glow, no soft lamp guiding you home. It is the crackling core of some subterranean fire. You feel it first as a hum, vibrating through bone and sinew, calling you inward. The hush of the world around you sharpens into silence, punctuated only by the faint, sweet thrum rising from your chest. With every breath, that murmur grows, swells until it threatens to tear the mundane veil in two. You pause and close your eyes. Behind your eyelids, a carousel of shapes unfurls, coiling ribbons of red and gold, a forest of ironwood trees crowned with glowing fruit, the silhouette of an ancient door carved with runes that blazes with unfamiliar light. There is a rhythm to it, a slow, unhurried pulse that seems to draw you deeper, as though the marrow of your bones were a tuning fork for some primal song. When you open your eyes again, the world has changed. The street is the same, yet you see flecks of starlight dancing in the cracks of the pavement. You hear a distant chant, half lost on the wind, as if the stones themselves were murmuring secrets. The ordinary has slipped its bindings, revealing the intricate lattice beneath. Threads of meaning pulsing with possibility. You feel an urgency now, but it is not anxiety. It is an invitation. Come, follow where this inner blaze leads. Let go of the worn paths of reason. Do not clutch at familiar landmarks. Instead, lean forward into the tremor beneath your skin. Let it carry you through the veil, past the edge of shadow, and into the domain where symbols breathe and images speak. There, in that threshold space, is the birthplace of revelation, where logic pauses and myth awakens. Each moment stretches like a cathedral ceiling, cavernous and hushed, offering both wonder and dread in equal measure. You step across the threshold, guided by flickers of ancestral flame, into a realm where every heartbeat resonates with the pulse of the cosmos. Here begins the slow unraveling of the known self, the careful dismantling of certainty, and the sublime forging of a new vision, one born of fire, shaped by silence, and carried forward on the wings of waking dreams. At the summit of his career, Carl Jung stood atop a pinnacle few could reach. As director of the Burgholzli Clinic, he was both heralded by academia and cherished by his patients. Lecture halls brimmed with eager minds, hanging on his every word about dreams and symbols. Behind the polished veneer, however, a subtle unease began to stir, like a tremor beneath marble floors. The very frameworks he taught began to creak under the weight of his own private visions, hinting that the ground he'd long considered secure might yet give way. It began in the depths of his sleep. At first, the dreams were little more than flickers, a blood-red tide flooding empty streets, ancient statues weeping tears of flame. Jung recorded these fragments dutifully, believing them curiosities that would pass, yet they persisted, growing in vividness and urgency. Each morning, the residue of those nocturnal scenes clung to him, whispering that something profound lay beyond the reach of conventional analysis. The dreams felt less like messages to be deciphered and more like summons to an uncharted realm. Foreshadowed by these unsettling visions, Jung's relationship with Freud began to fray. The two titans of the psyche, once bound by mutual respect and shared theories, found themselves diverging on the nature of the unconscious. While Freud sought to classify and cure, Jung felt increasingly called to surrender, to listen rather than to solve. His intellectual departure from Freud was more than a scholarly split. It was the first visible crack in the facade of his own certainty, presaging the greater collapse to come. Compelled by an inner force he could neither name nor contain, Jung retreated from the comforts of empirical research. In his secluded study, surrounded by tomes of myth and alchemy, he embarked on a radical experiment: active imagination. This method was neither dream nor wakefulness, but a liminal practice of conscious surrender. Night after night, he allowed images to form, recording every word and gesture as if he were transcribing a divine dialogue. At first, these figures seemed random, archaeological shards of memory arranged in chaotic mosaics. But as the sessions deepened, one presence began to assert itself. Philemon's arrival was both subtle and seismic. Jung first sensed him as a whisper at the edge of consciousness, an urging voice that spoke not in riddles, but in precise counsel. Then one evening, amidst a swirl of cobalt and gold, the image coalesced. An old man cloaked in kingfisher blue, wings folded like a cloak, eyes alight with ancient knowing. Philemon's appearance was foreshadowed by every prior dream: the waters, the flames, the statues, and yet his manifestation shattered Jung's last vestiges of skepticism. Here was neither hallucinatory fantasy nor mere symbol, but an autonomous guide demanding full attention. From that pivotal encounter onward, Jung's narrative arc transformed from clinical authority to initiatory pilgrim. He no longer sought to master the psyche as an object of study. Instead, he walked alongside it as a companion on a journey through darkness and into nascent light. Each phase of his quest, the rise, the rupture, the ritual descent, the meeting with Philemon, built upon the last, creating a cohesive drama of transformation. By the time he laid down his pen, having filled the Red Book with visions and annotations, Jung had completed an alchemical process within himself. The old self dissolved, and in its place, the alchemist of the soul emerged. Jung's Red Book overflows with images drawn from the deep wells of myth and the secret lexicon of alchemy. Yet these symbols can feel like locked doors without a key. At its heart, alchemy in Jung's work isn't about turning lead into gold, but about transmuting the base elements of soul into luminous wholeness. Imagine composting. You allow decay to occur, the alchemical nigredo or blackening, so that the fertile soil can give rise to new life. That compost stage is Jung's shadow work, confronting repressed fears and unacknowledged desires. Next comes albedo, the whitening, like washing garments in a clear mountain stream until they gleam. This mirrors the soul's purification, where clarity emerges from confrontation. Finally, rubedo, the reddening, is the sunrise of integration, when disparate parts of self fuse into a glowing new center, much like the golden glow of dawn cresting the horizon. Throughout the Red Book, Jung stitches together these three alchemical stages with archetypal figures. Take the serpent, an ancient symbol of both danger and renewal. In alchemy, it often represents the prima materia, the undifferentiated chaos from which all things arise, like the raw clay on a potter's wheel. Jung's serpent figures hiss of destruction, but also promise the creative spark that ignites transformation. Or consider the mandala, the circular diagram that appears on many pages. In Eastern traditions, a mandala is a cosmic map pointing to the center of being. Think of it as a compass rose carved into your psyche, each petal and ring guiding you toward inner balance. When Jung sketches a mandala, he is tracing the outline of psychic order born from chaos. Jung also weaves in Gnostic motifs, echoes of early Christian mystics who prized gnosis, or direct knowledge of the divine spark within. His 7 sermons to the dead, attributed to the Gnostic Basilides, read like a dialogue between the soul and the silent cosmos, blending cosmology, ethics, and ecstatic revelation. If standard theology offers doctrines to memorize, this Gnostic fragment hands you a lantern for walking the soul's hidden corridors. To make these references more accessible, note that archetypes are simply universal characters in the theater of the mind. The wise old man, Philemon in Jung's visions, is akin to Hermes from Greek myth, the messenger bridging heaven and earth. Philemon's blue robe and kingfisher wings recall Hermes' winged sandals. Both are guides through liminal spaces. Likewise, the anima, Jung's feminine inner figure, resembles Persephone, queen of the underworld, guiding the hero between life and death so he may return reborn. When you see a labyrinth, ultimately, Jung's use of mythology and alchemy transforms his pages into a map for seekers. By decoding these symbols, not as obscure trivia, but as living metaphors, you gain access to the language of the unconscious. In alchemy, gold is the goal. In Jung's psyche, gold is the self, the integrated whole that emerges only after you brave the darkness and follow the symbols to their source. There is a power in things concealed, a magnetism in locked pages and whispered secrets. Imagine standing before a heavy oaken door, its iron hinges cold beneath your fingers. Behind it lies a chamber of knowledge long denied to the eyes of the uninitiated. This is the world of Jung's Red Book, a manuscript so personal, so potent, that its author chained it away for decades, unwilling to expose its depths until after his death. What drives a man to hide his greatest work? What truths must he guard so fiercely? From the moment Jung dipped his quill into crimson ink, he understood that he was transcribing not mere ideas, but revelations that could shatter the boundaries of conventional thought. Each page is stained with the urgency of confession. Drawings of mandalas that swirl like portals, fragments of Gnostic sermons that thunder with divine insight, dialogues with inner spirits that speak of realms beyond time. These images and words are not academic curiosities, but living forces, erupting from the underbelly of the psyche and demanding to be heard. Yet for years, the Red Book remained buried in Jung's private vault, a treasure chest sealed with both love and fear. Love for the authenticity of his own experience, fear of the world's inability to receive it. He knew that scholars, rooted in rationalism, might recoil at the idea of conversing with autonomous psychic entities. He sensed that mystics might twist his words to suit their dogmas. So he watched as history raced toward war, leaving his crimson confessions in darkness, confident that time itself would become the arbiter of their value. Now, more than a century later, the Red Book stands as a testament to the potency of hidden knowledge. Its unbroken seal is gone, but the aura of secrecy remains. When you gaze upon its hand-illustrated pages, those vivid reds and golds that seem to pulse with inner light, you become an accomplice to Jung's daring revelation. You hold in your mind's eye a work that was once deemed too volatile, too intimate for public eyes. And you must ask yourself, what would you risk to hear the unspoken language of your own soul? To lean into this mystery is to accept an invitation, venture beyond the surface of your own life. Unlock the door, peer into the chamber where your shadows dwell, and listen for the murmurs of forbidden truths. In Jung's hidden manuscript, you discover maps of the inner terrain, labyrinths of fear that guard dormant strengths, serpentine figures that hiss of both peril and promise, and a sleeping self waiting to awaken. Each turn of the page becomes a rite of passage, a pledge that you too will meet whatever lives in the unseen. And yet, revelation demands courage. The secrets the Red Book whispers are not gentle affirmations, but challenges that question your very identity. Will you embrace the trembling unknown, or retreat to the safety of daylight certainties? To engage with Jung's hidden gospel is to gamble. You may find illumination, or you may encounter pieces of yourself you would rather deny. But perhaps that is the point. Perhaps true revelation only emerges when we consent to risk everything we think we know. In rediscovering Jung's secret text, we step into a lineage of seekers who understood that the most profound wisdom often resides in the shadows. The Red Book's power lies not only in its content, but in its silence. For decades it dared us to wonder, to yearn, to imagine what lay beneath its crimson covers. Now it is our turn to open it, to heed its call, and to reckon with the revelation that awaits. After all, some doors do not ask to be entered, they insist.